All right, we are live today with the Abundance to Give podcast. I think this is episode 10 or 11. We're still young into this thing. And I have Mr. John Rubey on today, so we're super excited to have you on board and kind of talking. I think the main reason of, you've been watching the podcast a little bit and seeing some of the people on it, and kind of you'd approached me when we were at our last peers meeting saying, hey, like, do you think like there should be some topics that could help people if we come on and talk about them? And I agree totally. And I think it's very important for people, that if you're struggling in life, if you're up, down, left, right, going through things. I mean, I'm sure you just saw that what happened. Was it Ellen Twitch? Did you see the thing about the Twitch guy?
That's crazy.
Unbelievable. I remember watching that guy on the Ellen DeGeneres show, and everybody deals with, mental stuff, depression, up, down. You have good days, bad days. How do you personally, if you wake up and your energy is just not there on a certain day, and, do you stay in that state? Do you try and change that state? Do you listen to music that makes you feel better? What do you personally do?
And, when life gives you lemonades, when life gives you lemons, just make lemonade, right?
Yeah.
My parents are really good about just making the best of everything that was given to us, right? You kind of play the card that you were dealt, right? And, my dad was a career Navy pilot, fought a couple wars, and there was a lot of times in his life where he was dealt some tough hands. And so, he was really grateful for just, being able to enjoy every day, right? And my mom, in a similar light, was raised to just, really be of service to, her family and just to hold it together. And I think the one thing I've really learned is, it's our obligation every day to wake up and choose how we handle what's given to us, right? And I wish I was perfect. I wish I could say I've done it every day of my life, but I've learned probably more from my failures than my successes. And when I realized
a lot of people say that, which is totally true. I'm the same way.
It really is. It's a true reality of being a human, I think, right? And one of the things I've learned is that I've made my fair share of mistakes through my life, and they were well intended. But what I really have come to is that gratitude and getting your mindset every single day you wake up. Now, that could be through a series of meditation or prayer, some sort of check in the morning to be able to just wake yourself up into the day and be super grateful for what's about to happen, but also reflect on, kind of yesterday. What'd you go through yesterday? How did it make you feel? How did you respond? Did you respond the way you wanted to, or did you respond the way you had to, right? So I think, waking up, starting that day through whatever program or whatever type of work that you want to incorporate into your mornings, it really works. I love the hot tub, man. I get up early, fire up the hot tub.
The one outside.
Yeah, the one outside, right? 14 hours is in the backyard. Yeah. But, I put some music on and chill, and it gets me going. It gets the blood pumping. I wish I worked out in the morning. I'm not a morning workout guy. In fact, if you ask my wife, I don't work out at all. Which is kind of true. But I work out.
You do your 9-inch curls of the Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
Get the Dunkin' Donuts going, and that kind of gets me rolling. But I think it all comes down to really, starting the day with a mindset that's going to prepare you for whatever's going to come. Right?
How do you deal with, and I'm sure everybody does, when you have a ton of stuff that you have to do the next day, right? And do you write it down before you go to bed? Does it spin your mind? You're waking up throughout the night? Because people deal with anxiety a lot. A lot of people I know deal with anxiety where because their mind keeps moving, it won't shut down or calm down.
Right.
Do you deal with that?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm in a highly transactional business. So for me, I've learned through just experience is that kind of replaying the day and cataloging or organizing what's most important for the next day. Right. So as my day's unwinding, I'm starting to realize, okay, I could not achieve everything I wanted to today. That's impossible. But the one thing I'm really focused on is the things that I did today, were they the most important things that needed to get done? And if they weren't, those are going to go right to the top of the list. Right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I do a lot of constant role playing in my mind to kind of organize the thoughts and also the actions and just get right into action as early as possible. So two things I do is I put those in play. If we're in a highly collaborative business and I work with a lot of different people to achieve success. So delegation and constant motion is really important. So if it's important, it's got to get done.
Yep.
Get it out early. and you can start working on it.
They say sometimes you want to do the toughest task first, right? Which is always ones we don't want to do, but you have to do it. And remind people kind of what you do for a living, like just your overall background.
Yeah. So my background, right out of college is, I got a degree in sales and marketing, and fell into an industry I didn't choose by any means, and it was in the printing and packaging business. So over a long, 3-decade career, I found myself in beverage packaging. So if you enjoy craft beer or wine or spirits, the company I represent right now is provides most of the empty containers and the packaging and all the materials that a brewery might need to be able to fill.
So they will design the packaging and provide the packaging.
Yeah, so we don't really do the design of the packaging. In some cases, we'll design the containers, but we don't do the graphic design.
Gotcha.
So we kind of take those.
So that comes into you, and then you're actually taking that.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll actually take the product. We sell the materials into the market to basically the producers of the beer, wine, or spirits in this case.
Gotcha.
So it's highly transactional, super fun. I came to this through acquisition. Myself and 2 other guys founded a company about 14 years ago, and we had some early success. And at my middle 40s, I realized that we sold the company, and I didn't realize I was kind of selling myself out of a job. Right?
Did they keep you on for a period of time?
Yeah,
I'm guessing it was part of the deal.
We spent 3 years in on an earnout that we had, and knock on wood, we all 3 of the partners stayed together, and we achieved the earnout. And it's just been that I've stayed on for another 5 years, and I'm loving it. I run a team of people that I didn't really get a chance to do before. I was always an individual contributor, sales guy, always kind of on my own, and now I'm leading people, and that's what I found is really my gift and something I love. And
so speaking on like packaging and marketing and all of that, when you actually walked in before we started this podcast, you jumped into Dunkin' Donuts, who you're drinking right now, by the way.
Donuts right here. Yeah.
This is a paid promotional product today. But talk about how they came into San Diego, because I had no idea. I mean, I've seen them explode here. You said you're on some webinar, and they're an East Coast company out of Chicago. Is that right?
Yeah,
run by an Indian family?
And it was really funny. One of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my life is in the same month I took a job with a New York City company, I fell in love with a woman from Philadelphia. And my whole world opened up. I learned what hoagies were and Philly cheesesteaks and this thing called Dunkin' Donuts. And for those of you in Philly or Jersey, Wawa, right? But Dunkin' was something that through my travels, I just always gravitated to.
Gotcha.
So when Dunkin' came to San Diego, they had an investor deck that they pitched out to what I thought was qualified investors. And I found out really quickly I was not. To get into the Dunkin' franchise, you needed to have about 25 years of real estate experience, 25 years of restaurant experience, and some ungodly amount of liquid capital that you could deploy and own 10 stores and run them.
Wow.
So at that point, I decided I'm just going to drink the product and envy those who run it, right?
Are they public?
Right? At the time, I don't know. I thought they're private, and I've kind of lost track. I'm just a consumer right now. And
America runs on Dunkin', baby.
Yeah, it does, baby.
I love it. So kind of jumping into a little more personal questions, I'm curious of what people think about this. When would you say that you, as a parent, have done a good job? If you're raising kids, like at what point can you say, I've done a pretty good job as a parent or not?
Yeah, I would say, boy, that's a daily exercise. As you know, Justin, you're raising young ones. And I think the one thing that I could honestly say that I've done consistently really well is to be vulnerable and just show them that I'm human, right? I'm just as flawed as they are. And in some cases, I'm way more flawed than they are. Right?
I know we always say, don't do what I used to do.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So for me, I think it's been really just being super humble and trying to just kind of get them to the point where they realize that, part of the journey is the mistakes, right?
Yep.
So I think at my best is when I accept them for who they really are as special creations. And I think, for me, my best parenting is done when I just don't place judgment or blame or just accept them for their special creations, right? And so for me, that's usually when I'm at my best. And I think when I'm at my worst is, I take a lot of my hangups and my baggage and bring it forth to them and try to expect them to be like me. And that's not really what I want, right?
Right.
So
you're trying to mold them.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
I had I gave you an analogy one time because I'd heard it. I thought it was a pretty good one. And someone said, raising kids is like driving down a highway, right? Like our job is not to keep them from changing lanes or from speeding or slowing down. It's simply to keep them in the rails.
Right.
You got the rails of the freeway, allow them to swerve, change lanes, speed, slow, stop, up, down, maybe even get in a small accident, but keep them in the lanes of the freeway and don't go over the rails. Just keep them from going over the rails, which is meaning hospital or crazy drugs or on and on and on, right? Keep them in the rails.
Yeah. And I think for a guy like me who my whole life's been on the guardrail, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an adrenaline junkie jumping out of, airplanes that are flying in a bat suit or anything, but I like to push limits, right? And I sometimes I create confidence that doesn't exist, and I think I can achieve things that are just not even possible, right? So the guardrail has always been a real challenging thing for me because I've lived most of my life on it.
Yep.
And up until recently, I think one of the things that's come to me over the last few years is the middle of the pack is becoming way more attractive to me.
Sure.
Right.
Or it's not too high, it's not too low. It's like,
and I think as you're raising kids, I think that's probably one of the things that I've realized that is so important.
So have you become more of a steady Eddie, as they would call it?
I think internally and motivationally in my mind, where I want to be is becoming more to the middle and steady Eddie.
Gotcha.
I still have the natural impulse to go up against the rails, right?
Dude, so we're part of Peers Network.
Right.
And, it's funny, post the event that we had a couple years ago, that was a golf tournament followed by an outdoor party that was an 80s Michael Jackson, et cetera. Everybody's dressed up to the nines in some weird outfits. And I think this was 2021, right?
Yes. A few years ago.
Yeah. So, and you were dressed, very vibrantly that evening. That's a good way to describe it, with your hair and the rock star, all that other stuff. And you were having a hell of a time.
Yeah, it was a blast, man.
And then post that, like we kind of recapped as a group, and the Peers Network in San Diego is kind of just a handful of entrepreneurs, men and women, that come together using their abilities, in running companies and running successful businesses, but also designed to flip that and get back.
Right, exactly.
Right, and that's 99% of the power of it, is to bring those minds together to then get back and help charities and organizations outside of us. But we also have some vulnerable moments. In our talks with the Peers Network is that we jump into each other's lives a little bit. And how are you doing? And I'm not talking like a 1 layer, 2 layer. Like we're trying to get a little farther and get people to open up and be comfortable. And it's hard.
Right, exactly.
Hard for me and hard for a lot of people. But you shared some pretty, tough stuff over the last few meetings. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but it deals with, alcohol, with depressional stuff, things that you've kind of battled through in the last few years, then kind of found your way out of it.
It's super real, man. And it's one thing where, kind of going back to, being the activator and the Energizer Bunny, or, leading the charge and going up against the rails, and in a sales career, you get to the point where you're like the chameleon of all chameleons, right?
Sure.
The deal depends on it. Your income depends on it. And I found myself just with that just natural energy I have to just kind of, the playground got really big, right? And, I kind of realized that at one point in my life, I'm like, man, I'm enjoying the partying too much, right? I like to enjoy the drink, and I like to go have fun, and I like to be the life of the party. And it kind of wasn't working anymore, right? And it kind of, it just kind of worked until it didn't, right? And I found that, what was sacrificing was just my inability to be present, right? And I think that led to a lot of anxiety, right? Like I just knew deep down in my soul that, what God really wanted for me when He created me was to really give back to people, and kind of created this environment where I thought I was giving back through my financial contributions to my wife, my family, but really, when I look back on it, man, I was kind of self-serving. Right? Myself and only myself, right? So, the partying and the drinking and the entertaining and all the things that goes on with, being a salesperson and trying to, justify it as like a client deal. Wow, I got to do that because my client likes to go out and party and have fun. And reality was, man, I was kind of doing that because that's what I did, right? And it really became a struggle internally about how do I take this kind of thing I've created through just being really successful in my life, and then unwind it to be able to do what really I was meant to do from the get-go.
Which is get back.
Which is get back, man.
And you did a lot of that recently with the Boys to Men. Right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't just do the normal Boys to Men like we all did, where we had the event, the gala, and we raised a lot of money for them. But you did the adventure where you go out into the camp.
Yeah, the Boys to Men group. And for those of you who haven't heard of it, boystomen.org, run by just a remarkable group of people. Yeah. Their purpose is to really take typically fatherless boys through the journey of 7th, 8th grade through high school, and it's really kind of meant to be able to prepare them in that journey from boys to men, and whether they had a father at home or not, it was really to prepare them to have a tribe around them to be able to just survive the pitfalls that men fall into as they grow. Right. And I think due to my experience and all the success I had and some of the things I fell into, it was a really surreal time for that organization to come to peers at the time when I was trying to change how I'm coming, living life. And
sure,
and it's
really, like you're changing yourself, and then this comes in.
And this kind of comes in. And what was really, really cool about it was they have this weekend called Reclaiming Your Teenage Fire. And the reclaiming, it's called RTF. And so RTF is intended for the mentors of these boys to be able to understand what it's like to go back in your life and be a teenage boy as an adult and prepare yourself for the ability to be a mentor that's going to not judge them, not cast like this image of who they should be, not even tell them what they should do. Just be there for them, support them, right? Let them make the mistakes, but understand that they're unconditionally loved by someone who's not going to treat them anything other than what they are, which is their, special creations, right? And
sure.
And we went through this weekend. And it was unbelievable, man. I think the coolest thing for me was it was 35 men. I hadn't met any of them for a whole weekend up in the mountains. And you get together, and the first night you bring a picture of yourself. And you have to, it's a picture of yourself when you're 15 or 16 years old.
No way.
And I didn't know what the picture was for. So the organizer's like, hey, just bring the picture. That's all you have to do. So after dinner, we get together and we go into this room and they shut down the lights and there's a table in the middle and there's all these candles, little tiny candles that are unlit. And so they're like, okay, guys, here's what's going to happen. We're going to sit around the room. You're going to hold your picture. And when you start, we're going to give you a candle and we're going to light it.
Huh.
And you're going to hold the picture and the candle together. And you're going to tell the group who that 17 or 16 or 15-year-old boy is in that picture.
Wow.
Then you pass the picture around the group and everybody gets to look at it. And as they're doing that, the next guy takes his picture and goes around. So 35 times, we're listening to each individual boy's story. The next day you wake up, it's pretty heavy, right?
Yeah.
Next day, the exercise is to take the same picture and now talk to that boy as if you were his father.
Oh, shit. Holy shit.
And you're like, oh my God. Now the narrative was nuts.
Yeah.
So as I'm describing myself the night before as a 16 or 17-year-old boy, to then come and talk about me as if I was my father.
Yeah.
It was such a wide gap, man. You could have driven a truck through this thing, right?
Sure.
Because what was crazy about it was the image I had of myself at 16 and the image I thought my father had of me at 16 was completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was really cool about it was
let me stop you real quick. What was the image that you thought your dad had of you at 16?
So the image I thought my dad had of me at 16 was I had to be perfect.
Gotcha.
So
your perception is that you thought your dad thought you needed to be perfect.
Right.
Gotcha.
And that's what I thought. I thought I had to be perfect. I had to follow the rules. I had to be like him because, as an aviator in the military for 30 years, he had a very rigid, and what I didn't realize is that, that wasn't his intent at all. And this experience really kind of helped me unhinge some some, you know, some
Is your dad still alive?
You know, he passed 5 years ago.
Okay.
And fortunately, we had a great life together. And I think what was really cool about it is at the end of his life, I was able to share some time with him. And a lot of this kind of had already been unraveled. But what I never really understood is how much I never let myself off the hook. Like I was always wanting to be good enough for him to give me that approval or be as good as dad or whatever it might have been. And what was really cool about it is that this weekend kind of led me to step back and realize, man, maybe I should get myself off the hook a little bit. Maybe I need to take myself off the hook. And what I can do now is be a better dad to my kids, right?
Sure.
Because I'm not talking to them maybe the same way my dad talked to me. And it wasn't because he was talking to me negatively. It was because of the way I was receiving it. And we just didn't have that dialogue, right? We didn't have that ability to open it up. And I'll share with you the last step of the process, which was killer. So at the end of the day, you can do a couple other exercises. And the last thing is, I want you to talk about the boy at 17 or 16 or whatever it might have been today, knowing what you know about that boy. So now I got at the end of the weekend to literally talk to me at 16 or 17 years old, knowing who I am today and what advice I'd give him. And it was unreal, man. It was such a killer experience.
Yeah. I mean, you got a deep dive into that.
Oh, dude, I didn't expect it, right? I thought I was going to be trained on how to show up and listen to a kid for 2 hours after school and you know, typical mentorship things, you know, tell them how to do a resume and tell them how to dress and all this stuff and all of a sudden I'm sitting here like, you know, curled up in the fetal position, crying in the corner, right? Going, what just happened, right? But the cool thing about it was it really opened up a really new.
It had to bring everybody together pretty well.
Yeah, and you know what the cool thing was is I wasn't the only guy going through it. Right?
Sure,
it was like 35 other men I'd never met just going through this really cool thing, right? And what we found is that this is what the boys want, right? The boys want to be just heard. They want to be accepted for who they are. They really don't necessarily want to be told what to do or how to do it. They just want to be heard, right? And understood that, hey, we're here to help you. We're here, the guide rails, right? The guardrails. We want to guide you to make sure you just don't go over them. That's all.
Sure.
How you want to go through it, you know, let's talk. And so it's been a really neat experience. So the Boys to Men thing for me is like, I didn't expect it. You know, I thought it was going to be another charity we supported and put our all in. But,
sure.
You know, it goes back to kind of uncovering a little bit about me and, you know, some of the deep things that I felt that were kind of driving me from the get-go as a young man. You know, I was always service-oriented and, you know, my parents did a great job of teaching me that, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm grateful, man. I get at mid-50s, I'm starting to see where I've got something to give, right? And it's really cool.
A lot of time left.
Yeah, a lot of time left.
So let me ask you this other question. You know, we see all the time in the media and you hear people saying it, politicians saying it. Hey, like things are so bad. The world's falling over. The country's coming to the complete shit show. Everything's going to hell, right? You hear this constant negative play in the media and around the place. Do you think that's the case? Do you think it is worse now than ever? Or is it just that everything's amplified because of social media, because of media in general? Is it just amplified and we're just dealing with different things in different ways now?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that I think I've always been pretty grounded on is, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a student of history, but, you know, being raised by older parents, I would say my dad was 40 when he had me and, you know, they kind of skipped a generation.
Gotcha.
You know, so my parents were born in the Depression. So I grew up, you know, hearing what it was like in World War II when it was tough, man.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know what it was like because I wasn't around then, but, you know, so I think some of the things we're seeing today in history are probably very common and repeatable things that have happened over time, right? And I think the difference today, it's amplified. You know, we have so much access to information. We have so much ability to express ourselves in a really quick, immediate way, whether it's through Snapchat or Facebook or Twitter, you name it. I feel like we're really quick to react. And I think that creates a lot of hype and anxiety in people. When I think in looking back, you know, before technology, man, you know, people sat around their living rooms and talked about it, right? Listened to the radio, you know, watched a little TV, and I think it was a slow play of forming your opinions of how bad it really might have been, right?
Sure.
And I think today we're just it's so easy to say the world's gone to hell in a handbasket. It's crazy, man. It's ending. And I'm like, God, this is just another recycle, right?
Yeah.
And I think as humans, we're adapting and we're getting to the point where we've got to learn how to be able to ingest in a way that's going to be productive, but also react in a way that's productive, right? So,
well, and accepting of other people's beliefs, opinions, lifestyles that may be completely against every core value that you have.
right.
And that's okay. Like someone was asking me the other day, like, and I want to jump into two crazy topics. We might as well talk about it. And they're saying, what do you believe in this whole abortion thing? Right. And I said, well, look, if you ask me personally, I'm not a believer in it. Right. But I am a pro-choice person simply because I believe freedom of choice. Anything you put in your body, vaccines, whatever it is, freedom of choice.
Right.
What you do with it. So that needs to apply to everyone. It can't just apply to my beliefs.
Right.
So if I don't believe in that, that's okay. Like you should have freedom of choice to do what you want to do, and no government or no person should be able to tell you otherwise. No different than vice versa on my end.
Right.
If you believe in that core value, and some people just don't grasp it. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you, because I said, for you being so hardlined, you're kind of limiting yourself in getting to know some just because of the lifestyle and the belief system, maybe core values don't line up with yours. You need to listen and be open to it, because that's half the battle of why everybody feels so split and divided.
Right.
And everybody's screaming at each other at the wall. And it's simply because they're trying to change the opinion of that person. I'm like, I got news for you. You're not changing the opinion of shit.
Yeah, right.
I said, this is a core belief system that I believe, and you're not going to change that by like yelling at me or giving me your things why and booming voices from skies. And I said, it's just not going to work. And it's because I was raised a certain way. It comes from a root core value system.
Right.
You're not going to change that very easily. It's going to take many, many years of me living in another person's shoes to be able to change that perspective. Right.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a great point. I think in a day where we feel like we have to be heard, right? Like just what we mentioned before, right? It's so easy to be heard and seen and noticed. And, a mentor of mine, so amazing. He said this. He goes, John, ask yourself before you ever give an opinion, does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said at all?
Wait, say that again. That's really good.
Does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me? And does it need to be said at all? And I'll tell you what, man, the more I run into things that just don't make sense to me in my life, now that could be professional deals where I just can't figure out the guy across the table.
Sure.
The emotional deals where there's things on the news or even in our environment, in our local communities with, even if it's hate, anger, gender differences, or whatever the things that might not make sense to me. Like whenever I'm in doubt, I just ask myself those questions, right? And
that's really, really, really good.
What it comes down to me is like, it's really calming yourself to react less out of fear, but more out of love and acceptance, right?
Sure.
Because here's the thing. Let's take, for example, you have a very staunch political idea or understanding that you're just going to go to the grave on, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that about you, right? Let's say we've never had that opportunity to challenge each other in that. I might be really taken back the fact that, man, that's a Justin I never knew before.
Yeah.
And that automatically clouded my judgment about you.
Sure.
And if I want to get on that argument path with you and I want to try to prove to you that you're wrong and right, and what it does is it creates a divide, right?
Yeah.
So to me, like, I don't want to be divided by you. I'm here because of you, right?
Sure.
You drew me to this opportunity to be able to do something I've never done before. I've never done a podcast. So, I'm better off because of you. Now, does that mean I have to agree on every single belief you have? No way.
No.
Right? We have a common thread here. We want to serve, we want to give back, right? Yeah. And to me, I don't think if we were here to talk about our beliefs and our values other than giving back, then we'd be called politicians, right? We'd be probably debating across the table from each other.
Is a disaster.
Yeah, I don't want to do that, right? So what I really want to do is I want to say, hey, let's come to the middle and find out what's common about us. And let's work on the things that we jointly together can do to make the world a better place for us, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's times when you got to put your line down. You got to have boundaries. You got to step in and say, hey, look, this isn't right for me. This isn't right for my family.
Yeah, but that gives you the ability to pull away versus attack.
100%.
Right? There's a difference between you coming in and trying to change that person's opinion versus saying, look, it's cool. You do you. I'll do me.
Right?
I'm going to go. This is fine.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. We clearly don't agree. Not a problem.
Yeah.
You know, and best of whatever. Right? But we can agree on X.
And I think that's where it comes back to, you know, the three things I try to practice, right? It doesn't need to be said by me, right? Do I really need to convince you right now that you're wrong and I'm right?
Probably not. No.
Does it need to be said now in the heat of the battle when we're just
trying to have a good time or something?
Yeah, or even if we're not having a good time and, you know, maybe I just don't know enough about you. I'm prejudging you by jumping to conclusions too quickly, right?
Yeah.
And then do I even need to say it at all? Like, what's the value in me coming out on top to say, yeah, I was right. And you're going to say, no, you weren't. I'm right.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, where did we get? Right? We got probably nowhere, right? And so
you'll be back at the exact same place you started. You'll just be pissed off.
Yeah. And so to me, you know, that's been a real neat like part of my life to where I attribute that to a lot of my experiences growing up and just being dealt a lot of different cards. You know, and I got to give credit and grace to my wife, and her Allie she's a first generation American. Her parents immigrated from the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
And
was it Persian?
No, she's actually Lebanese.
Lebanese. Okay.
Yeah, Lebanese. And her mom and dad met in Jordan, and they moved to the Philadelphia area in the 70s, and they had the kids here. But what's been really cool for me is being married into a family that's so different than me, right? And I think that's probably been the single most valuable and important thing that I've learned as a parent to be able to experience before I had children, because the acceptance part and understanding who that
culture, culture,
everything. I mean, there's stuff that her family does that just makes my head spin. I'm like, I just don't get it.
Well, but vice versa.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Big fat Greek wedding. You know, we had literally like 4 people on my side of the wedding, and she had like 400. Yeah, right, exactly. Right. But what was really cool about that is that, you know, you're funny. You watch that movie, you think that's not how it is. Well, you know, I'll show you a video. That's how it was.
That's
right?
exactly how it was.
But the beauty of it is, I really feel that, like, you know, seeing my kids, you know, my daughter-in-law is 14, my son Chase is 12, and they're grown up, and there's these beautiful, you know, mixed race kids which
are gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. And really, you know, that's all mom, right?
Yeah.
Are you
Irish or were you?
No, I'm Danish.
Danish?
You know, Danish, kind of muddish, you know.
Muddish. I'm a mud.
I'm a muddish.
Yeah.
But, you know, really, you know.
That's what else Europeans are.
Yeah, I definitely outkick my coverage. But it's been really cool, right? They have a lot of pride in being just uniquely special and different because of that virtue alone. Well,
called Middle Eastern cultures in general, Persian, Lebanese, very, very proud cultures.
Super.
Which is great, and they should be. And we're proud Americans, right? And it's just a different vibe. But I love learning about that and traveling around the world. I've been fortunate enough to do a good amount of that. You learn so much acceptance of people, backgrounds, cultures, societies. It changed me. I did that semester at Sea Trip. You know, have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, you told me about that. That was amazing. Man.
So I did this. And I'm so glad. I don't even know how I had this epiphany, but like I went to college, blessed to go, and I said, you know, I want to spend half my college overseas. I don't know why or how that came. I just thought, like, there's no way when I get older and get into life and kids and business and work, that you can go spend 4 months traveling the world. Never going to happen, right? So obviously I lived in Europe for a year in Germany, in Heidelberg, and did the whole European thing. And then came back at college. And then the next semester after that, I went on this thing called Semester at Sea.
Cool.
And it was on the real world was on it, blah, blah, blah. But we started in Nassau in the Bahamas. You get on the ship with 700 other students, some international, some US based. And one of the first places we went to was Cuba.
Cool.
I mean, talk about going back in time.
Yeah, like the 50s, right?
Literally. I mean, you drive in, I literally felt like I was back in Russia. in the 1950s driving. You see the cars, but the people were incredible in the beaches, and you learn a lot of history and stuff. But yeah, traveling the world to different cultures, into Africa and Asia. Literally did a complete loop around the globe. Unbelievable.
Yeah, one of the things you brought up in your semester at seas and your travels and college and just the acceptance of different cultures is like, if you look at the common thread amongst all humans, especially people who are parents or, children of parents, obviously we're all children of parents, right? Man, we just want a couple basic needs and things.
I was going to say, what do you think? This is the next question I was literally going to have.
Really? Yeah, cool.
Do you think there are 2 or 3 universal truths, right, amongst the 7 billion people on this planet?
Right.
That you could go to those people and say, you know what, I understand we have totally different XYZ, but we can probably agree on this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Go.
I would say definitely across the globe, and for every person living and every person who's lived and will live, the innate desire to provide for your children and love them, right? That is just something that's just God instilled in us, and it's not
like a basic safety and security of your family.
Safety, security of your family. It goes beyond just humans. And, you look at animals,
and for others, right? Other people's kids, and it's amazing how you can watch adults mistreat each other. And then the minute a little innocent child walks into the room,
God, they're like the sweetest thing you've ever seen, right?
Right, and it's that natural instinct inside of the human being that, regardless of we may up hate each other, that's an innocent, beautiful human being, and they have no idea. So let them be a child, right? Let them be a child.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny you say that because if you look at going back to some of our peers and our service work with nonprofits, it seems like we always gravitate to children's charities, right? Because I think it's not because we choose to say, hey, look, I want to give to this charity because the kids need help. I think it's because isn't that our job as adults and grownups to be able to just take care of those who need to survive in some cases, and in some cases grow up. And, so I think that's the universal truth when it comes to this providing and taking care of children, right? And I think the other thing, whether it's through an organized religion or whether it's through some, Taoism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, whatever it might be, I think every human to some degree believes to some level that there's something greater than themselves out there, right?
You listen, you hope so.
You hope so, right?
I've chatted with some people who are atheists,
right?
Because I just wanted to understand, right? Because I'm not even a religious person. I'm a very spiritual person. I grew up in a Christianity. My mom used to drag us to church and just ripping Sunday, children, let's go. And I even went to Pepperdine, which is a Christian university.
Wow.
And, it's just on and on.
You towed the line, didn't you?
I towed the line. But listen, I respect religions. They absolutely serve their purpose in our society, in our world, to give people hope, belief that they can grab a hold of something that's you can't understand.
Right.
I believe that we are a part of something that is so far beyond our comprehension as human beings, we can't even begin to fathom its complexity.
Right.
So we have created religions as a method for us as human beings to try and understand it.
Right.
And that's great. Good, because if we didn't have any something, this world would be a much crappier place.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point. Going back to me trying to prove to you what religion's right, let's say, in that argument.
Never going to happen.
Does it really matter?
No.
As long as I think we believe that if we can get out of self, right?
Yeah.
And we can get into service of others, and I think that's partly how our creators, let's say creators plural, made it. Because, everybody's going to have a different version of their creator. But I think that's how they made it, right? I think it's because it's some bare primal thing that exists in every one of us. I think we just, at our core, want to help, right? And we want to give and we want to serve, right? And so I think that's the truth. Now, I think, unfortunately, through a lot of difficult things that human beings can and will do to themselves or to others or you name it, there's a lot of damage been done along the way to where those things get masked and the shields go up and the armor gets put on. And in some cases, there's like you talked about earlier, there's mental health, right? And, I fortunately, I would say, in my life, I've been very blessed with having, probably pretty run of the mill mental health things, right? I've seen in the last couple of years some experiences with people who are really sick, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I found, even with those people, they just want help, right? And they want to be treated just like everybody else, right? They just want to be noticed and accepted, and so I think if we can come back and really just accept that, God, we're not all that different, right? And I think
we're really not.
We're not. Man.
We're really not, because there are those core universal truths. I do believe that people genuinely want health and safety for the general population, general people. Like, sure, there's people that wish ill on other folks, and so be it. But I do truly believe that, people want to help. People want safety and security for the family.
Right.
And they would ideally want that, generally speaking, for everybody else.
Right.
And so you can always go back to that core connection and try and pull away from those personal, belief systems that you're not changing, man. Yeah. It's funny because, like, when I was younger, I thought, oh no, I can change their opinion.
No way, man.
And then you get more mature, right? In my 40s, young 40s.
Young 40s.
I'm hitting on that. I'm staying in the lower half, right? I'm below the line. So, but then you realize, listen, man, it's okay,
right,
that you have a different opinion. You could be, it doesn't matter. Like, but if we can get to some core belief systems, fine. Or if we can just connect on certain areas, fine. But I'm not changing your opinion. You're not changing mine. It's okay.
It's all right.
And you do you, and I love you, and I'll do me, and so be it. And that's okay.
The last thing I touch on that, I think there's a third one that I think we as humans, and especially in today's world, in the massively productive pace we live in, I think we all want peace.
Oh,
and peace sometimes, it gets glorified, like, oh my God, peace in the Middle East, or peace on earth.
But think about that. So let's take the war in Ukraine and Russia.
Right.
Okay. This is how crazy this can be, but it makes sense. You hear Putin talk. He says, we just want safety and security and peace and prosperity for the Russian people. Right. Literally says that.
Yeah.
And then you'll get the Ukrainian president. We just want safety and security and peace and prosperity for the Ukrainian people. And then you get Joe Biden. We just want safety and security and peace and prosperity for the whole world. So everybody wants it. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Then stop taking, most wars, if you actually go back in the history of humankind, they're fought over one of two things. Religion or land.
Yep.
Religion or land. Because think about that.
Yeah.
Because land has the resources.
Right.
Religion, I don't believe your way, you don't believe mine. We need to put my people in, your people out. So it's typically religion or land starts wars because of mostly land now, because it's resources.
Right, it's resource driven.
Religion still, there's some pockets of the world that just have that, right? Not as much. And here's another fact. You can double check this. I don't believe any two democracies have ever gone to war. Yeah, Google that shit.
We'll have to Google that.
I'm pretty sure about that. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
If you think about it. Democracies understand concessions,
right,
negotiation. I can give and not get everything I want. We can live coexistent and not necessarily have to, run you run. We can do this in a democratic, peaceful, you do you, we do we, right?
Right.
When you run into democracies facing a dictatorship or a theocracy, right, or some form of authoritarian regimes, they don't understand concessions, negotiation. Right. We can live coexistent in peace and prosperity together. It's no, we're going to, I don't know. It's just, I don't want to say we want to take over the world, but they realize, no, we don't like your free living, free belief systems and giving people all of this stuff in human rights and blah, blah, blah. We need to have this. And therefore, because of that, you need to not exist on the planet. And we need to totally exist on the planet.
It goes back to what we just talked about, man. It's the the chest pumping war of who's right and who's wrong, man. And you know what's crazy? I look at peace differently, Justin.
How was that?
There's a thing called white space. You need it, right? It's like music. Like, do the notes and the sound really move you? Or is it the white space between the notes and the sound, right? Like, to me, are we carving out enough time every day to find something that's going to bring us to our center and be more peaceful? And if we can find that, then we can control what we can control, which is the way we interact with everybody, right?
Sure.
And I think when you go to wars and you talk about these things, it's like, is it ever about the people? Is it ever? It's really about the governments, right?
Yeah.
So if we can take...
It's about the resources.
Yeah, for the resources. So like, to me, the battle, all those these are extremely important world issues that we're facing right now. To me, if we can all focus on our own daily battles, right?
Yep.
Because how I treat you and how I treat him and how I treat the girl at Dunkin' who was serving me this through the drive-thru, and she was so happy and kind. And I'm like, and I made a comment to her. I said, you should call your mom and dad up and thank them for raising someone who's so happy, because you're just a really pleasant person, is what I told her. And she smiled like ear to ear. Right? That was free, right? No resources, no land, like just a gift, right? To give back to somebody to make them feel better that moment, right?
Yeah.
So, to me, I think as I'm piecing this whole puzzle together over, going on my 5th decade, right? Is, man, this is all kind of all interrelated, right? And I think if we can get to the point, one of my mentors told me in business, it's like a great leader takes the triangle of authority and flips it upside down.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
And it wasn't until I realized that I might not run a company now anymore. I might not ever run a big company to where I felt like I had to, I was the tip of the triangle, right? But I could certainly tip my triangle.
I think it was Jack Welch talked about it like that too.
Right?
You flip it upside down.
Yeah.
It basically open door policy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm serving you, like mentality.
And it it's funny. I was when I was driving in, man, I got to be honest with you, man. I was like, what can I say that's going to be important to the listeners of Abundance to Give, man? I mean, that is just the name of this podcast means so much to me. And it's like, it was very humbling to be here. And I'm so grateful. And I thought about it. I'm like, wow, I think the one thing I could give to so many people that are hopefully listening is giving is one thing, serving is another. Right? So I'm going to really like take that triangle every day of my life and flip it upside down, because that then creates me in a position where it's about servant-based leadership, right? And
does that come by way like acts of kindness? Yeah,
acts of kindness, acts of silence, right? Like to the point, do I need to constantly just engage in useless diatribe to be able to prove my point?
Right.
Or can I just choose to be able to say, hey, man, I'm wrong on this one. I got emotional. I was upset that triggered something in me. And you know what? Rather than fight with you right now, I'd really just like to figure out like how we can come to the middle, right? And sometimes that takes space and time, right?
Well, yeah, and it takes, I call it the bigger person, or the ability to have, I call it the 20 seconds of courage.
Right. No, I like that one.
Because if you really think about, like, I'm trying to think who I don't know which mentor this was. Maybe it's Tony Robbins or somebody I listened to, but he said, the whole world is around recognizing patterns, pattern recognition. That's how Tony Robbins has been so successful.
Pretty rad, right?
It says pattern recognition, because that you want to be super successful in life, personally, professionally, in health. Pattern recognition. Number one. Number two, it's all about 20 seconds of courage.
Wow.
So if you think about it, your whole entire life is about that. You wake up in the morning, you have some tough stuff you have to do that day.
Right.
You hit the tough stuff first because you have the courage to do it. Maybe it's a tough phone call you have to make. And you're like dreading it. You're like, well, 20 seconds of courage. Pick up the phone, make the phone call, because silence can be worse than, having a moment, right?
100%.
Whether it's a professional or personal conversation. Maybe you're at an event, a networking event, and like that one person you've been trying to meet with professionally or even personally is there. And you could play like, sit back in the corner. Oh gosh, they don't want to talk to me. Create all the stories in your head, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Or 20 seconds of courage. Take the moment to walk across. And it's always about acknowledgement, right? People like to be, they call it edification. They want to be edified. So you want to be able to walk in, say, hey, John, I had to walk across the room. I had to say hi to you, know about them, right? Your businesses and things you're doing, I've been a huge fan, blah, blah, blah. So immediately I'm kind of like to you, and your guard goes down, and I'm edifying you, as they call it, and saying, listen, I appreciate you and everything you've done. I just had to come over and say hi, introduce myself.
Right.
And you blah, 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 blah. I want nothing from you. So it's not about a want. It's just, I just had to acknowledge you and edify everything you've done, and just want to say hi, have a great day, and just start a conversation.
And how do you feel when that happens, man? Doesn't it make you feel so much better? Is like, as a person who...
Yeah, because you typically will work yourself up before the actual, and then the event itself is much easier.
Yeah.
And that goes from everything. Like when I jumped out of a plane, I'm sitting there in the plane going,
freaking out.
I am about to jump out of a perfectly good airplane into this abyss.
Not normal.
What's wrong? And then you'll work yourself, and I'm like hyperventilating in the plane. But once I jumped out, the event itself, I was like, this is the greatest experience ever.
And I think when you get to the core of that, it goes back to those primal things. Like, fear is probably, I think fear to me is the one thing that every human being starts with. The fear of when you're born.
Well, kids don't have squat.
No, but in reality, when you really think
about they're fearless. Talk to my daughter.
There's two things that kids and I'm not a pediatrician or anything.
Sure.
But when they come out of the womb, they're exiting a really safe, comfortable, warm place that's been secure. There was no fear of falling. When you come out, there's fear of falling.
Sure.
Now, usually the parents provide a safe, nurturing environment where the child doesn't really live in a fear that they might fall down.
Right.
There's a fear of loud noises. That means it's safety, right? So the fears are really primal, I think, right? I think the hangups we get in is that there's just things you're supposed to be afraid of, right? Falling down and knocking your head and dying. That's one of them, right? Should we have fear of walking into the house or having your parent come into the house as a little kid and be afraid of them? No, that's something we as adults can alter, right? We can change that environment, right? And I think acknowledging where people's fear base comes from is something you can do as an individual to say, hey, to better understand. Like, so as you're dealing with them, if I understand what's going to trigger you, right, I'm going to have a much better chance communicating with you.
Yeah.
Like if I knew you were a victim of like a friend of ours was him and his family were held hostage at gunpoint. And for like 10 hours bound and taped up was like literally gunpoint.
Yeah.
I can't replicate that in my life. I can't pull an experience like that out of my experience set that I can even closely relate to that human. Now, if I went up to him, not knowing that, say, hey man, what's up, bro?
Right.
Like, dude, shoot myself in the head. I don't want to do that. Make it a joke.
Yep.
I could flip out, right?
Yep.
And I didn't even know he did that, right? So the thing is I'm getting at is like, our fears are so real. We can't judge them. We can't say my fear is worse than yours or your fear is worse than mine or you shouldn't be worried or something about that. You shouldn't be fearful about that because who am I to say what's causing your pain, man? Pain is pain. Like it hurts equally amongst all humans, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, as I go back through my life and realize that, I did a lot of kind of comparison, hey, my life's tougher than yours, man. I should be treated differently because I have more pain than you.
Right, the victimhood, yeah.
The victim, man. And how you got there, I have no clue. But sometimes you do, right? So I think as we go through and we figure out how can we serve people, going back to that day-to-day interaction, I think just being really, really sensitive and asking open-ended questions and getting to know them as people and realizing that sometimes, you just gotta just be kind, right? And serve them. Right?
Yeah, at Pepperdine, it's literally their slogan on their signs, freely ye give, freely ye receive.
Wow. Very cool.
Right? Freely ye give, freely ye receive. So give freely without any expectations of receipt, and you shall receive back. It's just the law of the world. So as we kind of end up here, what is your biggest fear? What is your current biggest fear?
Yeah, I would say,
and it changes.
Yeah, it does, and it has, and honestly, I think my biggest fear right now is not living the life fully that I want to, because I feel that I'm maybe not going to work hard enough and the fear of not being able to provide to my family.
Mm.
I still have this struggle with financial freedom, even though I'm very well blessed and very secure. There is just this fear that one day I'm not going to have a penny and I'm going to like literally not be able to feed my family. I don't know why that exists in me.
Interesting.
And I, that's probably another podcast, but honestly, seriously, I think the one thing that I would, continue to work on is like, okay, what's driving that? Right. And so, for me to close out on that, one thing I do know is every time my fears are coming out, every time I'm scared, every time I'm cranky, pissed off, whatever, there's only one thing that always gets me out of it. Dropping my rock, going over there and serving somebody else, doing something for somebody else.
Interesting. So that fulfills you. Yeah. I think it fulfills everybody.
But it's like a daily basis, man.
Gotcha.
I have to do this daily.
Interesting.
Because if I don't do this over a course of a couple of days, I'm up against that guardrail again. I'm doing crazy stuff in my mind because, like, it's just the way I was wired, man. It's just the way I was born, man.
Sure.
I'm naturally uneasy as a person who's mastered the ability to make people feel very comfortable about themselves.
When you're not comfortable with your own self.
Interesting. Yeah. So what I've learned to do is that when I start to feel out of sorts, right? And I know it's coming because it's a repeatable pattern. It has been for
pattern recognition.
Yeah, pattern recognition, man. And your 20 seconds of courage, right? That really resonated with me, right? So I
tell yourself that every single time you're in a tough moment. Say, listen, this is like a 20-second of courage thing. Like this is the moment. So it's like recognizing it and saying, okay, you have two forks here or there.
Yeah.
Make the choice, 20 seconds of courage.
And go on, right?
And what's the worst thing that can happen?
You went down the wrong path, right?
You went down and you fall flat on your face.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, what do they say? Like, I would rather die trying than trying not to fail or something like that. Right. I mean,
and it's funny, as we're sitting here talking, you kind of asked me a question I wasn't really prepared for. Right. And as you were kind of talking, I was thinking about my response right now was like, I wouldn't say I lied to you right there. I didn't fully go one level deeper like you asked me before.
Yeah.
There's no real fear for me of providing to my family. My fear really is not being loved and accepted.
Mm.
And what happens is you put your values in the wrong order, right?
And you think that your value is
of what if a provider, right? Like
correct.
I've created the image of myself that my only value as a human at times has been my ability to provide because I did that really well.
Yeah.
Right?
And so if that fails,
then I'm not.
Therefore, you're not valuable.
And I'm not. Right.
Gotcha.
So the fear right there is really less about the action of providing, putting meals on the table or putting my kids to college or whatever. So what it really comes down to is
that's funny.
Yeah.
Have you done an Enneagram test?
I have not.
I had a friend of mine have me take an Enneagram because there's DISC testing, the DISC test.
The
DISC test,
right.
Okay. But if you want to go like few layers deeper and like get an essay on your ass,
I wouldn't mind, right?
Enneagrams, $12.
Way cool.
Take it online. There's a lot of followership on it, and it's amazing because what it actually showed me when I took mine was one of my traits is I see my value through how I provide.
Similar.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's mainly because of if you're a high achiever or whatever it is, motivated, blah, 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 you're associating your value with achievement and not you as just a human effing being.
Right. I would say this,
it's interesting.
The word provide is probably the one thing I've understood differently now. I associated providing with money.
Right. As do I. When it's not, that's not really, that's like one third. Right.
Who knows what the number is, right? I don't think it's even the point of what percentage the provide is. I think the action is, am I providing something to another human of value that's going to make them feel better about themselves, right? Mm. And if I did that every single day of my life, I'm going to be valuable.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if I don't do that every day of my life, or if I sometimes during the day don't do it, when I acknowledge and accept the fact that I did something that hurt somebody or did something that was inconsistent with providing value to them and helping them, I got to admit it and go right back to him and say, I acted like a real jerk right there, man. I said something and acted in a way that made you feel really uncomfortable. And honestly, right there, it's provided value. Because now what I did is I provided you with the comfort of knowing that I'm real and you can trust me, right?
Yep.
So, hey, man, it's been rad. I'm so grateful.
It's been fun, dude.
Yeah,
I mean, see how fast it goes? See how fast it goes?
Yeah, it was super
An hour,
fun,
boom,
man.
bada bing.
And you know what's crazy? I gotta give you a prop, man. It takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing.
Thank you.
And it takes a lot of I have a lot of respect for you because you've at one point made the decision I wish most people would, is that how am I going to do different, right? And I think just this leadership from you to me today has gotten me really excited about doing my version of different, right? So,
thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. All right, man. So until next time, thanks for listening in and watching in. We'll see you on the flip side.